Bullies pick on quiet girl. Big mistake. Seconds later they're begging for mercy. An inspiring story by Heartfelt Tales. The sound of mocking laughter echoed through the empty school hallway as 15-year-old Valentina Shevchenko pressed her back against the cold metal lockers, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. 3 older boys surrounded her, their shadows stretching across the polished floor like dark omens. What they didn't know was that the quiet girl they'd chosen to torment had been forging herself into something extraordinary in the silence of countless training sessions. What happened next would change everything they thought they knew about power, respect, and the devastating consequences of underestimating the human spirit. If you're enjoying this story of transformation and courage, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more inspiring stories. Valentina had always been different. While other girls her age were obsessing over social media and the latest fashion trends, she was studying the ancient art of muay thai in her uncle's dimly lit gym after school. The daughter of Kyrgyz immigrants, she had learned early that respect wasn't given freely in this world, it had to be earned, sometimes with blood, sweat, and unwavering determination. The bullying had started 3 months earlier when she'd first arrived at Lincoln High School. Marcus, Jake, and Tommy, 3 football players who ruled the school's social hierarchy with an iron fist, had immediately marked her as an easy target. She was quiet, kept to herself, and didn't have the designer clothes or influential parents that seemed to grant immunity from their cruelty. To them, she was just another foreign girl they could push around to assert their dominance. "Look what we have here," Marcus sneered, his voice dripping with false confidence as he stepped closer to Valentina. At 6'2" and weighing over 200 pounds, he towered over her petite 5'5" frame. "Little Val thinks she can just ignore us when we're trying to be friendly." Jake, his equally imposing sidekick, cracked his knuckles menacingly. "Yeah, we've been real patient with you, haven't we, boys? But ignoring us? That's just rude." His eyes gleamed with the kind of malicious intent that had terrorized countless students before her. Tommy, the smallest of the 3 but arguably the cruelest, pulled out his phone with a wicked grin. "This is going to make great content for my social media. Foreign girl learns her place. My followers are going to love this." But as Valentina looked into their faces, she didn't see the monsters that had haunted her nightmares for months. Instead, she saw something that surprised her: fear. It was buried deep beneath their bravado and toxic masculinity, but it was there. They were afraid of their own insecurities, afraid of losing the only power they'd ever known, afraid of being exposed as the weak, pathetic bullies they truly were. "I don't want any trouble," Valentina said quietly, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Her uncle's words echoed in her mind: "True strength isn't about starting fights, Valentina. It's about ending them when you have no other choice." Marcus laughed, a harsh sound that bounced off the empty hallway walls. "Trouble? Sweetheart, trouble already found you the day you decided to disrespect us." He reached out to grab her backpack, intending to dump its contents across the floor as he'd done to so many others before. That's when Valentina's 3 years of intensive martial arts training kicked in. The transformation was instantaneous and breathtaking. The quiet, seemingly defenseless girl vanished, replaced by a focused warrior whose movements flowed like water and struck like lightning. As Marcus's hand reached for her bag, Valentina's left hand shot out with surgical precision, her fingers finding the pressure point just below his wrist. The pain was immediate and excruciating. "What the?" Marcus began, but his words were cut short as Valentina pivoted on her right foot, using his forward momentum against him. Her right elbow connected with his solar plexus, and suddenly the 200-pound bully was gasping for air, doubled over in shocked disbelief. Jake, seeing his leader crumple, lunged forward with a wild haymaker that would have seriously injured an ordinary victim. But Valentina wasn't ordinary. She ducked under his clumsy punch with fluid grace, her 3 years of training making his movements appear sluggish and predictable. As his momentum carried him past her, she swept his legs with a perfectly executed technique her uncle had drilled into her thousands of times. Jake hit the polished hallway floor with a sickening thud, his head bouncing once before he lay still, stars dancing behind his closed eyelids. Tommy, witnessing the systematic dismantling of his supposedly invincible crew, dropped his phone with trembling hands. The device clattered across the floor, its screen cracking against the wall as he stumbled backward. "This isn't happening," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "This can't be happening." But Valentina wasn't done. Years of suppressed anger, months of fear, and countless sleepless nights spent wondering if tomorrow would bring fresh humiliation had crystallized into something pure and unstoppable. She advanced on Tommy with deliberate steps, her dark eyes fixed on his face with laser-like intensity. "Please," Tommy whimpered, raising his hands in a pathetic gesture of surrender. "I'm sorry. We're all sorry. We didn't mean anything by it, we were just playing around." "Playing?" Valentina's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of controlled fury. "You call 3 months of making my life hell playing? You call pushing me downstairs, stealing my lunch money, and spreading lies about my family playing around?" Marcus, still struggling to catch his breath, managed to look up at her with new eyes. The girl he'd seen as prey now stood before him as an apex predator, and the reversal was so complete it felt like reality had shifted on its axis. We didn't know you could fight," he gasped. Valentina's expression didn't soften. "You didn't bother to know anything about me except that you thought I was weak. You saw someone different, someone quiet, and you decided that made me less than human. You made me your victim without ever considering that I might be someone's daughter, someone's hope, someone's future champion." The word champion hung in the air like a prophecy. Because that's exactly what Valentina would become. But her path to greatness had been forged not just in her uncle's gym, but in moments like this, moments where she learned that true strength meant protecting not just yourself, but standing up for everyone who couldn't stand up for themselves. Jake slowly pulled himself to his feet, his legs shaky and his pride thoroughly demolished. Blood trickled from a small cut on his forehead where he'd hit the ground, and his eyes held a new understanding of just how badly he'd misjudged the quiet girl they'd tormented for months. "What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice stripped of all its former arrogance. Valentina studied the 3 boys who had made her life a living nightmare, seeing them now for what they truly were, broken, insecure children who had mistaken cruelty for strength. Her uncle had taught her that true warriors didn't seek vengeance, they sought justice and growth. "I want you to understand something," she said, her voice carrying a wisdom that seemed far beyond her 15 years. "Strength isn't about how many people you can hurt or intimidate. Real strength is about lifting others up, protecting those who can't protect themselves, and having the courage to be better than the worst parts of yourself." She paused, letting her words sink in as the 3 boys stood before her like defendants awaiting judgment. "Every person you've bullied, every life you've made harder, every dream you've tried to crush, they all matter. They all deserve respect and dignity, regardless of where they come from, what they look like, or how much money their families have." Marcus wiped blood from his lip, his eyes no longer holding any trace of the predatory gleam that had defined him for so long. "So what happens now?" Valentina picked up Tommy's cracked phone from where it had fallen and held it out to him. "Now you have a choice. You can learn from this moment and become better men, or you can continue down the same path and discover that there are consequences for every action. But understand this, I won't be your victim anymore, and neither will anyone else if I have anything to say about it." Tommy took his phone with shaking hands, staring at the spider-webbed screen as if it represented the shattered fragments of his old worldview. We'll leave you alone," he mumbled. "It's not just about leaving me alone," Valentina replied firmly. "It's about changing who you are. It's about finding strength through kindness instead of cruelty. It's about becoming the kind of men your mothers raised you to be, not the monsters you've allowed yourselves to become." As word of the hallway confrontation spread through Lincoln High School over the following days, something remarkable began to happen. Students who had lived in fear of Marcus, Jake, and Tommy found their voices. Teachers who had turned a blind eye to the bullying began paying attention. And Valentina, the quiet girl who had seemed so unremarkable just days before, became a symbol of something powerful and transformative. But the most remarkable change wasn't in how others saw her, it was in how the three former bullies began to see themselves. Marcus started volunteering at the local community center, using his size and athletic ability to help younger kids learn sports instead of using it to intimidate them. Jake joined the school's peer mediation program, learning how to resolve conflicts peacefully instead of through violence. And Tommy deleted his social media accounts, choosing to focus on building real relationships instead of crafting an online persona built on others' suffering. The transformation wasn't immediate or easy. Years of toxic behavior don't disappear overnight, and there were setbacks and moments of doubt. But the seed that Valentina had planted in that empty hallway, the understanding that true strength comes from lifting others up rather than tearing them down, began to grow and flourish in ways she could never have imagined. As for Valentina herself, the confidence she'd gained from that confrontation became the foundation for everything that followed. She began competing in amateur Muay Thai competitions, her natural talent and years of dedicated training quickly setting her apart from her peers. Her uncle, who had watched her transformation from frightened victim to confident warrior, began training her with the intensity reserved for future champions. But more importantly, she became a voice for the voiceless at Lincoln High School. She started an anti-bullying club that focused not on punishment, but on understanding and redemption. She organized self-defense classes for students who felt vulnerable, teaching them not just how to protect themselves physically, but how to develop the mental strength to stand up to intimidation and cruelty. The ripple effects of that single moment of courage spread far beyond the walls of her high school. Valentina's story began to inspire others in her community and beyond. Local news stations picked up the story of the quiet immigrant girl who had transformed her school's culture through strength, wisdom, and compassion. Years later, when Valentina Shevchenko would step into professional fighting arenas around the world, facing opponents who sought to break her will and crush her dreams, she would draw on the same inner strength that had carried her through that terrifying but transformative moment in a high school hallway. The girl who had once pressed her back against cold metal lockers in fear had learned that true power comes not from dominating others, but from refusing to be dominated yourself. The story of that confrontation became legend at Lincoln High School, passed down from one class to the next as a reminder that heroes aren't born, they're forged in moments when ordinary people choose to stand up for what's right, regardless of the cost. And sometimes, those heroes come in the most unexpected packages, carrying within them the power to change not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone around them. As Valentina walked away from that hallway on that pivotal day, she carried with her more than just the satisfaction of standing up to her tormentors. She carried the knowledge that she had the power to choose who she wanted to be in this world, victim or victor, follower or leader, ordinary or extraordinary. And she had chosen to be extraordinary. The bullies who had once played with her, thinking she was weak and defenseless, had learned a lesson they would never forget. But more importantly, Valentina had learned something about herself that would shape the rest of her life, that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. This story reminds us that we all have the power to transform not just our own lives, but the lives of those around us. Sometimes it takes a moment of courage to break free from the roles others have assigned to us and become who we were always meant to be. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more inspiring stories of courage, transformation, and the incredible power of the human spirit. Your support helps us continue sharing these important messages with the world. What's your story of standing up for what's right? Share it in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.